Okay, so I'm coming to you again, and I have another request to do a video. This request is on credit. Now, to inform you before I even get started, I'm not a credit guru. I don't have nothing, no knowledge about the the way the credit system work, or I haven't obtained any classes or anything on credit. I can just tell you what I've built on my own and how I was able to increase my credit score by 100 points in less than 90 days by following certain techniques, and how I was able to get a car off the lot. Now, when I got the car off the lot, it wasn't a challenge for me just to do something to show people. It was nothing like that. When I went to get my car, it was a challenge for myself to see if I can do it. Now, let me give you a little background about me and credit. I was never focused on my credit because I just pay for things in cash. I never had knowledge on building credit. Another thing was, you know, I wasn't focused on a credit score. I didn't know much about the credit history and why you needed a credit history. So when I first got started into building my credit, what happened was I downloaded an app, and it was telling me about my credit, and it says like, you don't have a history with credit. And I'm like, wow. At the time, I was around 30 years old, and I was like, I don't have a history with credit. It was like, okay, so how do I build a history? Like, I didn't even know I had anything on my credit report because I was ignorant to the fact of having credit. So I went to the Beauty Academy. I graduated in 2015. So after school, about 6 months later, that's when I realized that by looking at my credit score after being 30 years old, that's when I realized that, hey, it just said I just started getting credit. And so I had student loans on my credit report to go to school. I think my loans totaled to $20,000. So when I looked at my debt report, it was $20,000 for student loans. I went to the hospital. I had a bill for probably about, it was like maybe one of the bills were like $75. One of them was like $200. One of them was about maybe roughly $50. One of them was totaling $1,000. So I had accumulated that on my credit report. And so what I done was, I was like, well, I'm getting credit from my student loans, because it's like, that's when I first started credit. So I want to be careful with removing my student loan, because if I take that away, it may say, I'm not for sure, but it may say that I don't have any credit at all. Now, the hospital bills came later, even though it was from prior events of going to the hospital back in, when I had my accident back in 2008 or 9. For some reason, it didn't hit my credit report until after I went to school. So it was from like 2009, and they didn't put them on there till later. And what happened was, is something I learned. What happened was, they didn't recognize who I was. They didn't know who I was. So one day I got a call. And so when I got that call and they asked me, they said, well, you went to the hospital on such and such time. And I told them, yeah, I went to the hospital then. So that's when they were able to put it to my credit report. But I was told if I'd never answered that phone call, they wasn't able to put it on my credit report. Well, fast forward. You know, I had just moved to Georgia, and in the process of just moving to Georgia, you know, I said, okay, you know, I just want to see how this credit works. I just want to see if I can go get a car. Well, my credit score wasn't the best because I hadn't had anything on my credit report. It was saying I was new to credit. So after that, I said, okay, let me try something. Let me try credit cards. So I went and got a $200 secure credit card. And that was me putting the money in, and it was me financing that and paying back. They said, okay, just give us like $20 or $30 a month, we'll build that. So after a month of reporting, I noticed that my credit score went up. So then I got another offer, but this was for an unsecured card, and that card was about $300 or $400. So I got that card, and once I got that card, I paid a little back. See, what I realized was I didn't want to get a credit card and have that credit card and pay it right off, because I needed that credit opened on my credit report. And so I was paying that back one time, and then the next month came and I was like, wow, my score is going up even more. So I said, okay, let me go get another credit card. And so I went and got another card. That card was unsecured, and I did the same thing. I followed the system. So at less than 90 days, my credit score went up 100 points. And let me tell you, so the thing is, never pay the credit card back on the due date. I wasn't paying it back on the due date. What I would do, I was paid on the 15th. I paid it 2 times. I paid it before the due date. I paid a payment, half of the payment, and then when the due date came, I paid the other half. So it made the system think that I was paying 2 payments versus paying 1 payment back to that credit card. Now let me tell you this. Make sure you only get enough that you can pay back, or that you're willing to pay back, because I was getting offers that I felt a little bit out of my budget, because I didn't want to accumulate that and then have to pay it back. So that was one thing. But let me tell you some tips. So some of the strategies that I used was open one card at a time. Now, I went for the offers. I wasn't going just applying for credit cards. I went into the ones that was actually offering me the credit cards. Another thing was using the payback twice a month before the payment. Never pay off the whole balance. I never paid off the whole balance, because it's something on your credit report that shows you the percentage of how much credit you're using. And you want to always keep that percentage. If they tell you, listen, it's very important to keep it in between 1% and 3%. Because that way, when it goes to report, you'll get the highest score. Versus some people say, I have heard people say 10%. No. Don't go to 10%. Don't go to 20%. I mean, you can if you want, if that's what you want. But if you want to get the maximum credit score out of your if you want to get the maximum out of your credit score, then shoot for the 1% or the 3%. And so I had of no knowledge, just going and reading, and I looked at some of the offers and I read. Now, be careful, because late payment fees, everything can occur. So you don't want to occur anything late. So always make sure that you're looking at that date. Another thing is 3 things that I had to figure out. I had to figure out, when was my payment due? I had to figure out how much, split it in half, when would those dates be? And then I had to figure out, when was the reporting date to the credit bureau, because that date is important also. Because say if you get a credit card, when I got my credit card, I think I had probably about $200 in my pocket. So when I got the credit card, I was like, okay, I'm paying my bills back and I'm gonna pay a majority of it, but something that came up and I needed to take my money back. Well, it's very important never to take that money back until after your reporting date, because if you pay the money and then you take the money out before your reporting date, that could trigger some alarms for your reporting to your credit score. So these are some of the tips that I used, and mind you, again, I am not a guru. It's the steps that I followed because I wanted to establish credit. So I wanted to prove to myself, not to no one else. I wasn't doing it for show or doing it because nobody told me to. I just wanted to say, my whole life, I was purchasing cars, from auctions, from people selling cars, and I wanted to pull the car off the lot. So I challenged myself to do that, and I conquered it. I conquered it by being committed to doing it, like a challenge. And that's one thing that we all can say, like, it's an experience, because it's like if somebody tell you to do something, it could be a question of whether you're doing it or not. But if somebody say, I bet you can, then you'll go hard at it, because you're going to show them that you can. And that's one thing that I do to myself. I always say, I bet you can't do that, just so I could do it and push myself. And that's a way of staying committed and dedicated to whatever you want to do. Whenever you want to do something, tell yourself, I bet you I can't do it in this amount of time, and make sure you keep everything reasonable. But these are just some of the tricks and some of the tips that I use. I don't know if it's tricks or tips. I'm just telling you what I use and how I was able to raise my credit score up to a point where I could go to a point where I could go and get what I wanted to get done. And I felt very good about it, because I felt that if I could do it, anybody could do it, because I had no knowledge and it was something I wanted to do. And I just feel like people can trust you when you go for anything like loans or anything or whatever you may need. They could trust you more with paying back on time. They're looking at your payment history and they're looking at things like that. So thank God, you know, my mother wasn't the type that, okay, I'm gonna put this in her name, I'll put that in her name, I'm gonna do that. But she wasn't that type. But I thank God that I was able to teach my son. So by the time he turned 18, his credit score was probably about at a, I want to say like a 603 or 604. And he's currently working on his credit. But I even took him to get a finance so he could work on his credit. I even taught him about the credit cards. But still new to the payment history. So whatever's on your credit and give you the most age and seasoning on your credit, I wouldn't suggest you move it, because they're looking for the time frame of your credit. And I hope this helped. It wasn't much, but it was enough to tell you that you can do it. You can do it. You can do whatever it is you want to do. Just be mindful to keep record, keep everything in black and white. If you have an app on your phone, one thing I do sometimes, I send things to different accounts so I don't lose anything. But it's very important to keep paperwork, because systems make mistakes. You cannot trust the system. You got to be on top of your game. Now, you have a great day, and this is my video on credit. And remind you again, I am not a credit guru. I was just someone who was able to conquer 100 points in less than 90 days and drive a car off a lot. Now, you have a good day.